Hello everyone, I'm Batuan. Today I'm going to present you the movie of The Rider, which is a 2017 made American Western drama film written and directed by Chinese director Chloe Zhao. While I'm presenting this movie, I will also relate the film with the article of The Myth of Total Cinema written by Andre Bazin. So before analyzing the movie, I will summarize the arguments of Bazin for you to understand his concept of cinema. Actually, to analyze the article of The Myth of Total Cinema, we should also check his one other article, which is The Ontology of Photographic Image. I will shortly mention the ontology of photographic image, then I will continue with the myth of total cinema. But let's see our guy in the first place. Here, Andre Bazin, here's a camera in his hand, and so now you know who Andre Bazin is, we can continue. By the way, I wrote some quotes from his articles. You can read it while I'm explaining the ideas behind these quotes. In Anthology of Photographic Image, Bazin claims that the plastic arts, especially sculpture and painting, have their origins in practice of embalming the dead in ancient Egypt. The psychology behind these arts is a desire of resemblance that concerns more about the idea of permanence rather than aesthetics aspect of the art piece, which could be considered under the term of realism. He also argued that perspective was the original sin of Western painting. However, with the invention of photography, art of painting become free since it tries to depict reality with a distorted infrastructure. Invention of photography depicted reality in a very clear way that there is no more need of reflecting reality with the art of painting. In general, he argued that the true aim and the purpose of invention of photography is reflecting the reality without any interference of the artist except framing. To continue with, in the myth of total cinema, he continued to argue that the motive behind the invention of cinema comes from the inner will of precursors rather than the scientific developments. The precursors imagined that cinema as a total and complete representation of reality. They saw in a trice the reconstruction of a perfect illusion of the outside world in sound, color, and relief. To explain his concept of myth of cinema, I'll use one of his quotes from his article, which is the guiding myth, then, inspiring the invention of cinema, is the accomplishment of that which dominated in a more or less vague fashion all the techniques of the mechanical reproduction of reality in the 19th century. From photography to the phonography, namely an integral realism, a recreation of the world in its own. He continued his arguments by claiming that considering a silent film as a perfect movie is meaningless since it lacks the realism of color and sound. He added that every invention in the field of cinema will make nearer to the origins which aims to depict reality, and concluded that in short, cinema has not yet been invented. So that's the summary of Bazin's arguments and thoughts. Now I will examine the movie of The Rider by having regard to Bazin's arguments. Now I will summarize the plot of the movie The Rider, which narrates the story of an heavily injured rising rodeo star in South Dakota. Our main character, Blade Blackburn, experienced a near-fatal head injury that weakened his right hand and caused it to lock itself from time to time. Doctors have told him that riding will just make them worse. Brady also regularly visits his friend Lane Scott, who lives in a care facility after suffering brain damage from a similar accident. Brady lives in a poverty with his father Wayne and his teenage sister Lily, who has autism. His father spends his money generally for gambling, and to provide the needs of the house, Brady sells his horse Gus. After that, he takes a job in a store to raise money for the family. He also makes some money from breaking in horses. With his savings, he intends to buy another horse. However, his riding and refusal to rest cause him to have a near fetal seizure. In final, Brady decides to take part in a rodeo competition, despite the doctor's warnings. At the competition, just before he competes, he sees his family watching him. He decides to walk away from the competition and life as a rodeo rider. So, right now, you people have a question in mind that how does this movie reflect a reality? Actually, Chloe Zhao made a movie that made Bazin really proud. The movie Rider based on a real life story of the rider Brady Gendron, who is actually acting himself in the movie. Zhao took the story of an injured rider and reflected it into the movie screen. The interesting part of the story is the characters on the movie actually acting themselves. Brady is acting on his own story as a star actor. His father and his autistic sister are also playing themselves in the movie. And the other people in the movie are all playing themselves. Yeah. In short, everyone is playing himself or herself in the movie. Zhao casted people to play themselves in the movie while they did not have any acting experience before. However, when I watched the movie for the first time, I didn't realize that the players are amateurs. I did not have any idea that the movie is narrating the story of Brady at all. She managed to direct in a way that the spectator never understands their amateurism. One other surprising fact is the Lane Scott, who is the guy on the left. You can see he's in a wheelchair. The problem with this guy is he was severely injured in a car crash from his head in 2013, and he's still able to play in a movie. Another surprising fact is Brady's sister, Lily, who is on the right, who has mental disabilities and still make it to act in a movie. So in my aspect, that is a huge success that casting not only amateur actors in the movie, but also casting people with mental disabilities or head injuries to play themselves. So I think the movie reflected the reality in a great way that it actually depicts a real story without make audience feel that the attempt of demonstrating the reality. For instance, the problem of trying to make a movie realistic could be seen in the movie of The Blair Witch. The producers of Blair Witch tried to make it so real so hard that as audience we feel that lack of harmony in real life. However, I cannot talk about the same lack of harmony in this movie, and I'm repeating that Bazan would be proud if he watched this movie. So, here my presentation ends. I wanted to answer your questions. However, since this is a recorded presentation, you don't have any chance to ask. See you then, take care and wear your masks.